Peace and love, black families. The Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. Umar Johnson. Make sure y'all donate to the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy fundraiser, brothers and sisters. Very, very important. Mail those donations in, payable to FDMG Academy, P.O. Box 6872, Philadelphia, PA 19132. We're also going to have a crowdfunding campaign going up real soon, so make sure y'all support that. Let's get that school built, FDMG, Team Pan-African, Garvey and Garveyism. We going hard. Get at your boy, Dr. Umar, drumarjohnson.com, drumarhbcutours.com. However you got to get at me, you get at me. Houston, can't wait to get to you. Phoenix, can't wait to get to you. Birmingham, England, can't wait to get to you. Bahamas, can't wait to get to you. Oakland, LA, Detroit, Chicago. The boy is coming back soon.
America is a capitalist society.
Anything that drives a profit.
As long as prisons are big business,
America is down with it.
Washington, D.C. area are suspended or expelled 2 to 5 times more often than white children. It's a national trend that needs to be addressed.
And even with education, there's no jobs.
You don't have a choice but to do some dumb shit.
The best days in the United States are behind us.
You know, they undereducate you. After that, they underemploy you. Even under the president that looks like you.
Indicators are telling us that it's headed downhill.
You're a walking, talking uranium for these people. You're a stick of gold with mouth and eyes and ears.
Most states in America look at the reading level of black boys at the conclusion of elementary school, which is normally 4th or 5th grade, to determine, to predict how many new prison cells they'll need in the next decade. Statistically, if a black boy cannot read by the time he finishes the 5th grade, there's a 75% chance that he will be a criminal by the age of 25. It is the relationship between miseducation and criminology.
When you look at instances like New York stop and frisk, when you look at instances like Troy Davis, Trayvon Martin case, which has ignited everyone across the world, you know that racism is alive and well in America.
When you look at the prisoners, the majority of us,
everything that we aspire to be, everything that conspires against us, typically they meet on it.
Black men are being publicly traded on Wall Street the same way you trade sugar, leather, gold, diamonds. Just like in slavery, black men are the raw resource of America.
The goal is to get bodies, to get free labor, and to generate money and commerce at the expense of whoever just happens to get caught into the system.
I believe that if a group of people have not sat down and formally decided we're going to do this, at some point a group of people realize that these numbers corroborate one another, they coincide, they form a line from A to B, and if they've done nothing to interrupt that or stop that, that still is a conspiracy proven true.
They've done studies where they found that 70 to 80% of people that are incarcerated are at different levels of illiteracy. So there you know that if you're illiterate in 3rd or 4th grade, then it's very likely that you'll be in prison. So you mean to tell me that people that decided on where to build a prison or how to build a prison or when to build a prison didn't look at the research? They had to look at something. So, of course, I mean, if I was trying to make millions of dollars off private prisons, I would be looking at, oh yeah, we're gonna have a lot of prisoners this year because nobody can read.
Revolutionary in my family was what they call reading. My grandmother would always remind me, remember, they used to kill slaves, cut your tongue out blind, learn how to read, so that's how important it was.
I don't necessarily know if their hatred of black people is greater than their love for money. I think that if they could make money without destroying black people, they would probably try to do that. But the fact is that prisons have become a very convenient way for the powers that be to get wealthy while letting us pay the bill, so to speak.
If there is no tangible benefit for political discourse to improve the economic outcomes of people in our community, then we're going to have to be stuck with the same. And we see that with the incarceration rates, we see that with the poor lack of education, and we see that with the dismal economic growth.
And so I think that for African Americans to have freedom, to truly be free, we've got to embrace ownership and other forms of educational economic empowerment. Because when you walk away from education and you walk away from economic responsibility, you are walking right back into the hands of slavery, and that's something that we don't want to do.
They take the same dudes that get snatched out of your neighborhoods for bogus drug charges, nonviolent drug charges. They put them on work camps, and they have to clean the side of the highways and the exits now. Now, this not only happens at a much reduced rate that you would have to pay if you were paying a fair labor, unskilled labor. Not only that, you'd have to insure them. You'd have to give them a city pension. We wipe all that out by using slave labor, paying these men pennies on the dollar, and then forcing restitution, most of which never makes it back to a victim, but just makes it to these mysterious court calls to keep the system running. So it is indeed slavery.
So prison, we can say, is a new cotton.
Yeah, you are the cotton. Right now, you the cotton brown.
Oh, man.
The Board of Education versus the Board of Incarceration.
The Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision of May 17, 1954 was a watershed moment in the history of the black civil rights movement in this country. But it also did more harm than good.
First of all, we have to define the word education. In the 1968 speech done by H. Rep. Brown called The Politics of Education, he said that black people in America are not educated, but they are trained.
The worst thing that it did was to destroy our own independent black institutions.
So even though it brought black children into white schools, it did not bring a representative amount of black teachers into the white public schools.
Proposition held by Brown v. Board of Education was that there had to be equal treatment under the law in terms of education. Those who did not want to give up white skin privilege or harbored racist notions began to agitate different types of education.
So if you don't change the mindset of the teachers, if you don't change the mindset of the system, then Brown versus Board of Education does more harm than good.
I would argue that there's no difference between the black codes of Reconstruction and the educational and legal policy of the United States public schools, as well as the criminal and justice system.
Because of the fact that if you fail, it's a good chance you're going into the prison system. So you're going to serve and you're going to build this country through that type of servitude. If you pass and you got good grades and you go out and you get a master's degree and you go work in corporate America, you're still going to build a society.
The schools fail on purpose because they have to guarantee that black folk remain the economic and political and social underclass of America. And in order to do that, you have to make sure black children are not given a winning chance in America's public schools. Schools are designed to fail black children to prevent a radical shifting of the power alignment in American society.
The whole purpose of education is to facilitate racism, is to make sure that African people do not know who we are and how to function as economic entities in this society.
Education is indoctrination if you're white, subjugation if you're black. So that means that we are subjugated by education, meaning that it's used to conquer us, it's used to control us. So when I think about the school to prison pipeline, I think about an institution that is strategically designed not only to give me dishumanizing messages, but also to send me to prison.
The sad thing about it is everyone knows that if you miseducate a child, you create a criminal by virtue of the miseducation. The average reading level of an African American male inmate in the United States of America is the 3rd grade.
There's plenty of money being invested, but it's invested in their demise. The United States was built off of slavery. It was built off of capitalism. So it's only right that they continue that system. In order to continue that system, they got to make sure that that there are folks to fill those beds. They got to make sure that there are inmates.
I was sitting in a restaurant during my 2008 Green Party Power to the People campaign, and a van pulled up and a group of young men got out and they were reporting to work. Those young men were prisoners, but they were reporting to work at a corporation, providing free labor to a corporation.
Black people in this country constitute a labor force that has evolved and developed out of a system of first chattel slavery and then Jim Crow segregation. And as far as the white supremacist system that we're living under is concerned, we are expendable. And the only way to make a profit off of our existence is through prison.
We're not playing a race card. I told them there, I want to go let them forget. America is a race card.
Police have killed young, unarmed Black and Latino men.
Right there.
We do live in a society and in a system that believes that those Black and brown kids, particularly poor Black and brown kids, just aren't as worthy as those pretty little white kids out in the suburbs. That's the underlying philosophy that leads to this economic disparity, which I don't know if that's ever going to change, because the government does not like you. It does not feel any remorse for what it's done to Black men and women over the last 400 years. They won't even apologize for slavery. Think about that. They won't even apologize for slavery.
Black and brown people look for leaders while other ethnicities build systems, because the system is the solution. It's all by design and has always been by design, because no system in this country was set up for the empowerment and upliftment of Black people.
I believe that the Brown versus Board of Education, as well as the civil rights movement's push for racial equality, is essential. It's not as if it stopped us from our progress. What stopped us from our progress was our will to continue to fight. Some people got comfortable, and as a result of that comfort, they have not fought on.
Brown versus the Board of Education struck down de jure segregation. That is segregation by law.
It's something that was probably inevitable. It's something that was good if used in the right context, but ultimately, I think that we can all agree that integration has been an absolute failure for the Black community. Desegregation might have been a success, but integration was a failure.
Was it a watershed moment? At that particular time, many people felt it was, but it resulted in our valuable teachers leaving our community. It also put our most precious commodity, our children, in the hands of people who didn't have our best interests at heart.
1968 speech done by H. Rep. Brown called The Politics of Education. He said that Black people in America are not educated, but they are trained. So we have to ask the question, since all warfare is based on deception, and we know that we are at war with the Caucasian or the European, so who was behind Brown versus the Board of Education?
When you put Black children into a situation where you're now integrating and nothing has changed, white supremacy is still alive and well, you start to think about things like Dr. King later in his life, where he's wondering, is this push for integration leading people into a burning house?
It was in two parts. So the first part was to desegregate schools, which essentially dismantled testing versus service in the United States. The second part was the actual law. I said, okay, now we've got to dismantle the system, and they started instituting rules like busing, moving Black folks to different neighborhoods, white students in different neighborhoods.
What type of people were being produced before 1954? W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, Noble Drew Ali, Carter G. Woodson, Marcus Garvey, and the list goes on and on and on and on. These people who were independent thinkers, these people who did what? By and large, they self-taught and self-educated themselves. Because as Carter G said in the book, The Miseducation of the Negro, he said the best education that is to be desired is the one that one gives to self, not that is given to self by someone else.
We were not integrated into the public system and learning through the school system like we were. So being integrated into that system, being able to learn, be able to read, write, all those things were good. But when you look at education in 2015, it is just not the same education. Actually, it's a watered down version.
I think we sometimes are fooled into mistaking education from indoctrination, not realizing that sometimes when I quote unquote educate you, I'm not really educating you as much as I am assimilating.
To ask ourselves, did the United States government really intend to help black children? And if they did, why would they not financially support already segregated schools and quote unquote inadequate black schools and help those schools to be stronger foundation for learning for young black children?
It certainly didn't dismantle the ideology that promotes white supremacy and white racism. The worst thing that it did was to destroy our own independent black institutions.
We know that integration did not help the black community, but segregation certainly doesn't help the black community because we deserve to have freedom. The question is, are you intelligent and conscientious enough to know what to do with your freedom?
The problem with Brown v. the Board of Education is that it was a reform of segregation, of segregated schools of the South, of institutional racism. You can't reform institutional racism, you have to abolish it. And the only way to abolish institutional racism is to abolish the institutions that practice it.
The Board of Education sacrificed one of our most important social institutions outside of the black church.
So if you don't change the mindset of the teachers, if you don't change the mindset of the system, then Brown versus Board of Education does more harm than good.
Yes, our schools were underfunded. Yes, our schools may have not had the resources they need, but at the same time, our schools were able to provide our children with the love, with the nurturance, with the self-respect, with the appropriate lessons they needed in order to be able to survive white supremacy.
It was never about educating black children. It was about putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound and making it seem like integration and racial equality was the goal, which it never was.
The first premise of warfare is deception. So again, we have to ask ourselves the question, what did the Brown versus Board of Education really do for black people?
The United States was built off of slavery. It was built off of capitalism. So it's only right that they continue that system. In order to continue that system, they got to make sure that there are folks to fill those beds. Slavery never stopped. It just changed forms.
Children should be continuously celebrated and appraised for being who they are naturally and not made to go into school systems that's stripping them of their cultural identity and making them to be something that they are not.
We are training students to function on a certain level in society, whether it's in terms as illegitimate capitalists or criminal.
The prison industrial complex is fed by the school to prison pipeline. So when we filter them, because they're going to act out in this environment, into the prisons, they know how to function in that system.
Why do you send me to prison? So I can't be an active member of society and participate to my full potential. So what happens in schools is that students are being relegated to a system that is oppressive. And I don't know where you're from, but I've never known oppressors to be the best teachers of freedom.
Black people have been educated to be functional inferiors. We receive an education, but we receive an inferior education.
So what the education system essentially is a filter by which those who are given certain opportunities, provided with certain supports, make it through, and those who are not given those opportunities and supports don't. They essentially become the employees, and those who do make it through become the owners.
Our children can barely write now, but they can make a guess out of 4 choices.
Peace and love, black family. This is Dr. Umar Johnson, the Prince of Pan-Africanism, Black America's #1 most requested orator. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. We just had another sellout event last night. I'm going to be coming back. We're going to be having a very, very powerful elementary genocide documentary screening and community conference. That's right, brothers and sisters. We're going to get serious about building independent educational institutions for our children. We're going to get serious about organizing the Atlanta Independent Black Parent Association. We're going to have lecturers. We're going to have think tanks. We're going to have seminars. We're going to have question and answer ceremonies. But it's all about elementary genocide. Get ready for it. More details to follow for vendors and individuals who want to participate. Elementary Genocide Documentary Conference and movie screening. You don't want to miss it.